I'm Devin Hembry, and I'm here with
CJ.
CJ. How do you feel about this latest use of force with the police?
I'm shocked. As a human, I'm shocked as a mother. I'm shocked that we have yet one more incident of young people being shot for what appears to be no reason. There are other methods to handle. I thought police were trained in other ways, and it would appear that guns are their first resort, and there's too many people dying.
I heard from another person that the officer involved, he's a combat veteran, served multiple tours in either Iraq or Afghanistan, and then worked for the Border Patrol. One of the big things for how the military operates is with their use of force policies is if they come under fire, they actually have to radio to command to be able to defend themselves, relative to how law enforcement operates, which is where if I'm afraid, I fire. How does that make you feel?
Well, I happen to be a combat war vet, and that's actually correct. You have to radio for all that you do with guns. How police are getting away with just shooting people in back alleys at random without any accountability is something I would imagine needs to be addressed at the training level. The officer that did this was only on the force for 3 years, and that means he was trained 3 years ago to do this. So that's how the policy manuals are still saying that he should be shooting at will, and so it needs to be stopped at that level.
I don't know if you've heard, but the officer involved hasn't been interviewed yet. He's not going to be interviewed until next Tuesday. And it's the default policy of most law enforcement agencies to not interview for the first 72 hours. How does that make you feel?
If I were to have committed a shooting, I would have to give my statement right away. Why is he allowed to wait 72 hours? That's my big question. The regular citizens have to testify immediately as to their memory, for one thing, starts to fade. And how are you going to get anything clear in 72 hours if there's a waiting period? That doesn't make sense.
Prosecutors stated today that the reason they don't interview is because within the first few minutes of the incident to the next day, their adrenaline is still so pumping through their bodies that they can't be trusted. Do you believe that? Or do you think it's more has to do with the police unions and the bureaucracy of that side of it?
I would have to say the second. That is bureaucracy loud and clear. It is protection of the officer all the way around. When two people are laying in the hospital, lucky to be alive, the officer should be given the option to testify and while his memory is fresh and not forced to wait 72 hours.
Okay. And then under Washington State Revised Code, there's a statute that more or less, the abbreviated version down, is an officer cannot be charged with a crime when involving lethal force if he did not have malice or an intent. Basically, as long as he claims that he was afraid for his life and they can't prove that he wanted to kill somebody, that he can't even be charged.
There has to be another way to look at that. For one thing, how can you judge prejudice? How do we know this officer wasn't prejudiced? These were unarmed people that were shot. And how do we know what went on? There has to be an investigation. You cannot just blanketly say, I'm not going to, the officer cannot be charged. That's too, that's communistic almost.
Okay, now, there's no video footage of the incident. Neither Ole PD
and that's a tragedy.
Or their Ole PD doesn't have dash cams or body cams. The only video footage that even exists of this potential incident shows the origin of the incident at Safeway, and their footage. And the prosecutor and the chief have stated that they will potentially not release that footage of the initial incident for why they were called out.
The people have a right to see that footage. The people have a right to see that footage. And since when is shoplifting punishable by 2 bullet wounds in the chest?